All right, good morning and welcome back. Today we are going to start talking about trigonometric ratios. And when I first say that, probably lots of you are unsure what that means. If you look right here, it says three basic ratios given when we have a right triangle. Okay, so a couple things to notice. First, to have these trigonometric ratios, we have to have a right triangle. Hopefully you remember that means there has to be a 90-degree angle. Okay. Now, when we have a right triangle, we're going to start by practicing labeling. There's three sides, and they each have a different name. One we will call the opposite side, one the adjacent side, one the hypotenuse. And once we figure out how to label these sides, we'll move into what the ratios are. Notice for each of these triangles, it's from the angle x. So look where the x is. It's at a different spot on each of these. So if the x is here, first I want to point out we can put our right angle in. Now, we have an opposite, adjacent, and a hypotenuse. The easiest side, in my opinion, is the hypotenuse. We hopefully remember this is the longest side. It is also the side that is opposite of the right angle. So hypotenuse has to be over here. And I will put an H. Okay. Now, we also are going to have an opposite and an adjacent side. Now, opposite, if I said the opposite side, like my cursor here, the opposite side of the screen from this mouse, you guys know is the bottom here. If I said the adjacent, these two boxes are adjacent. They are next to each other. Okay, so adjacent, if we think compared to angle x, adjacent would be one of these two. This one already has a name, the hypotenuse, so the adjacent side is down here. This is our A, which means the opposite is over there. On number 2, once again, we'll put a right angle. Now, the hypotenuse is the easiest one to find. The opposite side from angle x is down here on the bottom. The adjacent side next to is right there. Okay, number 3. Once again, we draw in a right angle, and the hypotenuse is very easy to find. Opposite of that x would go over here, O. Adjacent would go right beside it, right there. And the final one, put in your right angle, the hypotenuse up at the top. Right next to it's adjacent, and opposite is on the other side. All right. So the reason we care about these O's, A's, and H's, we are going to have three trigonometric ratios. They are worldwide accepted. Yeah, they're very common. Sine, cosine, and tangent. So this is how you spell them, sine, cosine, tangent. But if you look here, sine of A, cosine of A, tangent of A, SIN, I know it looks like sin, but it's sine, cosine, and tangent. So the sine of A is the side opposite of angle A divided by that hypotenuse. So our hypotenuse is the little c. Opposite of the A would be right here. So remember we said opposite over hypotenuse, which in our case is little a over c. Now this little a over c only works for this picture. If it's a different picture, it'll change things. But our next one, the side adjacent over the hypotenuse, so that's our a over h. So if we look here, adjacent a is this little b over c. And finally, tangent, TOA, opposite over adjacent. Okay, so opposite, we already said is little a. Adjacent is little b, so we put it right there. Now, to remember that, here we have this memory trick, and we're going to say SOHCAHTOA. So hopefully that's ingrained in your head. SOHCAHTOA. Okay, SOHCAHTOA. Just hear it from my mouth. SOHCAHTOA. Hopefully that's ingrained in your head. It's a kind of funny word that maybe seems like gibberish, but SOHCAHTOA. Okay, what that stands for. Sine, which I'll put, you might want to write it like this. Sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Meanwhile, the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And then tangent is the opposite over adjacent. Okay, SOHCAHTOA. So the sine of angle P. For angle P, we care about it compared to this angle, angle P, the one I put in blue. Now, opposite of angle P is the 15. Adjacent to angle P is the 8, and 17 is their hypotenuse. So in blue here, the sine of angle P, O over H, so O over H just be 15 over 17. The cosine A over H, 8 over 17. And finally, TOA, tangent, is opposite over adjacent. So 15 over 8. Okay, we've got our three different ratios for angle P. Now in red here, I'm going to show you angle Q, and it changes if we were talking about with respect to angle Q. Now the hypotenuse will still be the same. It's still 17. But the 15 is now beside that angle, so that becomes adjacent. The 8 becomes our opposite. Okay, so at this point, Q, angle Q, the sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Remember, angle Q is in red here, so we said angle P was the blue one, so angle Q in red, O over H, so that's going to be 8 over 17. Cosine, A over H, so 15 over 17. And finally, TOA, O over A, so O is 8, 8 over 15. Now notice, between these two charts, do you see how the sine and cosine switch places? That makes sense, because when we use the other angle, the O and the A switch. Meanwhile, the tangent, therefore, is a reciprocal. 15 over 8 becomes 8 over 15. Now, we got two left. It says write the fraction for sine, cosine, and tangent of angle X. So on number 5, we are trying to find what sine, cosine, and tangent are. Angle X is right here, so hypotenuse is the easiest, that's the 5. 3 is the opposite, and 4 is adjacent. So at this point, it says O over H. So remember O over H, so 3 over 5 for sine. Cosine is ca, A over H, 4 over 5. Tangent is TOA, O over A, so 3 over 4. Those are my three sides, or my three ratios. Okay, the next one, once again, sine, cosine, tangent. Remember, this is with respect to x. Okay, so with respect to x, x is right here. We have the opposite over the adjacent. Sorry, what am I saying? So, opposite over the hypotenuse. So, opposite is 12, hypotenuse is 13. Okay, then we have our cosine, adjacent, ca, adjacent is 5 over 13. And then finally, TOA, tangent, is opposite over adjacent, 12 over 5. All right, that is all, except I want to show you something on delta math. So there's two types of questions on delta math. The first type, I'll show you in just a second. The second type is a little bit more difficult. So if we are doing the second type, let me get this so I can draw a picture. So it says in triangle TUV, and the first thing we want to know is we said that this is always going to be true if we have a right triangle. So just draw a right triangle. You're going to have to draw this picture. I think it's going to be very tough to do if you don't draw a picture. So we draw our right triangle in. Now it tells us the measure of angle V equals 90 degrees. So I put that V right there. It has to be the right angle. I don't care where you put the T and the U. You can put it at either side. Just put one at each corner. Okay, but we have to have the V there because it tells us it's 90 degrees, and that's our right angle. So V, I can put the T up at the top and the U. Now notice, it tells us UT is 65 right here. If UT is 65, then I know from U to T is the hypotenuse, that's 65. Okay, it also tells us VU, so I go from V to U is 56. And finally, TV right here is 33. Now, right from the start, we should know that the hypotenuse has to be the longest one. So 65 is clearly the longest. It's also opposite of that right angle. So that's our hypotenuse. Now we are finding the cosine of angle T. Angle T is up here. So adjacent, opposite. Cosine is ca, adjacent over hypotenuse, which in our case is 33 is the adjacent, divided by 65, the hypotenuse. So I go over here, 33 divided by 65, hit enter, And we are done. Now, the only other type of question, so do several of those. You're going to have to draw the picture. The other type of question is very easy. It just says identify the opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. So this one says which segment is the hypotenuse. Hopefully you know. Opposite of the right angle, so YP or PY, same thing. We just submit and we're done. Now, if we want a new question, sometimes let's get one that's not. Which segment is opposite to angle K? Angle K is here. Opposite we know is over there, so SV, or you could say VS, but we just select that and we are done. So hopefully it's not too hard of an assignment. Try to get it done. If you have questions, let me know. Hope you have a great day. Bye.